Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for April 18th, 2017. Could you please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Red Brown.
Here.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Ken Mann.
Here.
Satpal Sidhu.
Here.
Carl Weimer.
Here.
Thank you. Could you please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, just a couple of quick announcements. If you have your cell phone with you tonight, please either put it on vibrate or off so we don't interrupt the meeting. If you'll be handing out any paperwork tonight during either a public hearing or the open session, please provide a copy to our staff so they have it for the records. We have one item from Committee of the Whole, and that was consideration of an appeal of the hearing examiner's decision on file number SHR 2015-0003 by Christine Williams and Thad Anderson regarding the Deming Speedway Access Road. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that we uphold the hearing examiner's decision.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to uphold the decision of the hearing examiner. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have 7 sets of minutes. I won't read them all. They're here in your packet. Is there any corrections, additions, or deletions to this list? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Don't you have to make a motion first?
You need a motion, Mr.
Oh, yes, I do.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been a long day.
It's been a very long day. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We will move into our public hearings. Audience members who signed up at the back of the room prior to the beginning of our meeting will be called first and will be asked to form a line behind the signs on either side. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Our staff will signify, or they will let you know when there's 30 seconds left, and they will let you know when time is up. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record, and that's it. We will move to the public hearings. Our first one is an ordinance repealing and replacing Whatcom County Code Chapter 2.44 and amending Whatcom County Code Chapter 3.37 to integrate the Behavioral Health Advisory Board and the Chemical Dependency/Mental Health Program Fund Oversight Advisory Committee into a single Behavioral Health Advisory Committee. Is there any staff report? Could you come to the mic, please? And state your name for the record.
Perry Mowry, Human Services Supervisor, Whatcom County Health Department. I'm here for questions, but there's no report.
Okay. Any questions before we start?
No.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing. First up is Rachel Lucy.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. I'm here in my role as the chair of the Public Health Advisory Board, and I'm also joined by another board member, Dr. Chena Stone. And we just really wanted to come here tonight to share the intention behind one of the policy goals we have suggested is number 5, which would be an addition and an amendment, and specifically around including early intervention behavioral health promotion focus on young children and families. And we just wanted to be here just to remind the council that this came forward as a part of the council's decision as a health board to focus on 2017 on young children and families. So just wanted to affirm that and offer our support and recommendation for that inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the list. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to us about the behavioral/mental health program? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it back to council. What's the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Brenner?
I just have one question that I thought I read in, and I just want to make sure. I love the idea of combining them, by the way. This still has a spot for a council member.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My thing just fell apart, so I couldn't quickly look there. Thank you.
Can I also offer a reminder in regards to, given the passage, that the council does need to appoint the council member? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this is an ordinance, so please call the roll.
Roll call.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Man,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Our next public hearing is on an ordinance adopting interim amendments to the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan and the Whatcom County Code, Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Title 20, Zoning, and Title 21, Land Division Regulations, and Title 24, Health Code, relating to water resources. Is there any staff report for this?
Good evening, Council. Mark Personius with the Planning Department. Just very briefly, this is our update, readopting the interim ordinance regarding water resources in response to the Hearst decision. This ordinance makes two changes, requiring the county, not the applicant, to pay for any third-party review of geohydrology reports and mitigation plans, and allowing for alternative ways besides financial assurances to guarantee that mitigation will remain in place. This is, again, our interim ordinance. These are our temporary response to comply with the Hearst decision until we can adopt a permanent ordinance. We are hoping the legislature will address that issue. We're getting close. With that, the Hearst decision has been a very big topic in Olympia, and there are a couple of bills, a couple of different ideas floating down right now regarding how to address the issue, and hopefully having the state make those legal determinations on legal water availability where there are adopted in-stream flows. But also, as we discussed this morning, and is also in the proposed resolution for you later tonight, kind of outlines our recommendations that we've been pursuing through the Association of Counties to respond to the decision, requiring or asking for a mitigation program to mitigate impacts to in-stream flows, and some additional flexibility for counties to respond to that decision. But primarily that we're looking for the state to address the issue, and particularly the Department of Ecology to sort of head up that water resource mitigation effort. So in the meantime, it's a bit of legal muddy water that we're in, and so the interim ordinance complies, keeps us on a GMA compliance path until we can get a permanent solution, and we are working on that as we speak. And you will see in the resolution we've outlined all of the activities that the county is doing, and working with our partners on finding eventual mitigation solutions for water supplies for rural property owners. So with that.
Okay, any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mann.
Can you also just give an update on the timeline with the Growth Management Hearings Board, what our obligations are there, and is there a schedule yet?
There is a compliance date, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date, but it's sometime in the beginning of May. And depending, I think the intent has been that will likely request to continue that date so that we can wait before we make any final solution or find any final solutions. We see what the legislature does.
And we can do that at the compliance hearing, or we have to do
No,
that pretty soon?
I will, in fact, my intent is to file a motion shortly to
Okay.
continue that date.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Donovan?
So I keep saying I'm not super confident about the legislature doing a definitive fix on this. I mean, maybe that will happen, and we've been hoping for that since the beginning of this. But like, what are we doing if that doesn't happen? And you know, we're gonna ask for an extension on the compliance hearing in terms of other things we can do?
We will, if we don't get a fix from the legislature, we will make our own fix. So either we do that through the GMA compliance, probably through the GMA compliance process. So we will come up with a permanent set of regulations that will comply with the court decision or with whatever, if state law changes, or through the compliance process to be found back in compliance with the GMA.
Mr. Sadoo?
Mark, I have a question is, a lot of attention has been fixed on residential domestic water. Hearst decision has taken up so much oxygen. I think there are other issues about water also. We need to look at the short-term issues and there are long-term issues. I mean, we are where we are because maybe 10, 15 years ago, we as a community or as a county government could have done a few things. Then we are in this situation. And if we leave it alone with a fix and just talk about only domestic, residential, or developmental water, we still are leaving the bigger issue out there. So is there any thought process that how do we tackle the bigger issue of all water use, not only for exempt wells?
Right, yes. We are moving on a variety of fronts on that. And in fact, in your resolution for consideration later this evening, we spelled out all of the things that the county is doing, the county is coordinating or working with other jurisdictions or partners in the county on, including the PUD on a drought contingency study, with the Lummi Nation they are looking at mitigation options to move water upstream and move water into the tributaries for salmon when it's needed, looking at the feasibility of some of those options. Those will play a very big role in, I think, helping to kind of solve the jigsaw puzzle of our water problems. There are a number of other partners that are doing things. The PUD has looked at a study of agricultural water rights and what their needs are. We've got a water supply work group working at the staff level that's coordinating a lot of those different activities. Birch Bay Water and Sewer District is working on deep water, deep aquifer well exploration to look for alternative supplies that theoretically wouldn't impact in-stream flows. So there's a variety of things we are working on already. The large issue and why we need a state fix is to be in sync with whatever the state water resource management agencies are going to be doing, what they think are priorities, what the tribes need. All of those things are coming together. We're working as well through the Watershed Management Board. The planning unit's been involved in these discussions as well and will continue to be so. So there's a lot of good conversation going on, a lot of good discussion, and a lot of good, I think, movement as a result of this decision. So,
okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Besonius, the part of the draft of this proposed resolution was that had the statement, the county does not wish to take legislative action that could later cause property owners legal difficulties similar to those encountered by Skagit County property owners who were issued building permits and then were later found to be lacking a legal water supply by the Supreme Court decision. Do you have personal knowledge of what happened in that case?
So in the Skagit case, they had made some amendments to the Skagit in-stream flow rule, and then had issued permits based on, and as a part of that rule, there had been some reservations of water made available for domestic use, for residential use on wells. And so they had issued, I think, 400 some permits for houses, for homes to be dependent on that well water. Then a lawsuit came and went up to the Supreme Court, and in that case, the court ruled that those homes, that water supply was not legal. And it put those homeowners and those homes in some legal jeopardy about whether or not they had a legal water supply, and that's still the case today. So it's kind of a precautionary note to us to be careful about our regulations and making sure that's why it's so important for us to stay in sync with what we know of state law or what we can get out of it.
So had some of those people, some of those 400, had they built or started building houses?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So they're in a situation, that sounds like an awful situation to be in.
Yeah, my understanding is some of those, they're not, they don't know if they can sell their homes, they don't know if they can legally finance, resale, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because that's one of my concerns and one of the reasons I've supported the continuing moratorium, because I do not want to see us misleading people that we can give them the right to build when in fact the Supreme Court may bring the hammer down like they did in Skagit, so.
And we very much look at this as a temporary bridge,
Right.
this interim ordinance, to just get us to a permanent solution.
Right.
And
Yeah.
hopefully we're getting very close to that.
Because personally, I would rather be told I can't build than be told I can build, and then be told I have to stop building and leave, the foundations and the stick frame there, or whatever the case would be. That'd be a much worse situation, so.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I got to make a correction, first of all. There was nothing wrong 10 to 15 years ago, which is causing this today. Our county, I can't speak for Skagit. Our county uses less than 1% of consumptive water use by exempt wells. It is not an issue at all. And we had the ability, after that Supreme Court ruling, which was, they didn't interpret law, they made law, which is not even legal. But we had the right and the opportunity then to ask them for a reconsideration, since staff did not know what it all meant. We didn't know what it all meant. And I brought that up at the time, and the council did not want to do that. That was one thing. But this whole thing of putting it, like it's not our fault, it's those before us, or it's somebody else. People filed a lawsuit, and instead of objective ruling by the state Supreme Court, it was a very biased ruling, which has to do with who pays for you to get elected, which is a horrible way to have a Supreme Court.
Ms. Brenner and Mr. Chair, shouldn't we have this conversation after the public
Yeah.
hearing?
But okay, I'm just saying that it wasn't an issue, but you didn't interrupt when someone else said,
That was staff.
no. Councilmember Sadoo said this came from what happened 10 to 15 years ago here. It didn't. It had nothing to do with that.
Well, then I should have interrupted him too, sorry.
Well,
but
yeah,
We should have our public hearing.
Yeah,
I
let's-
agree.
Well-
I
well,
just had to correct
okay.
that, sorry.
We'll go ahead and hear from the public. Let's open the public hearing. First three are Peter Willing, Amy Glasser, and Terry Montoya.
Good evening. I'm Peter Willing. I am a licensed hydrogeologist in the state of Washington. I have prepared the kinds of reports that you are talking about in this ordinance and previous ordinances. So I know a little bit about the,
Yeah, speak closer. You might have to bend
it's
over.
too far away. Take my Cape Warm stance. So I've prepared some of these reports before, not in the context of the Hearst decision, but in other situations where we're trying to establish hydraulic continuity between groundwaters and surface waters. So I know that business. I have written a letter to you in the last week or so, which I believe states my points in a little bit more detail, but I'll just summarize them quickly. First of all, I think that the people who are caught in the middle of the situation, who have drilled a well 4 years, 8 years, 10 years ago, need some kind of relief. And I think I've talked to a number of these people because they've contacted me. I'm on the health department's list of people who deal with this kind of issue. So I think the people that are stuck in the middle need some kind of relief. I'm very concerned about implementing a procedure that involves multiple hydraulic continuity studies by different consulting outfits. It basically is an establishment whereby we say, let's you and him fight. And it'll be very expensive for the landowners. It'll be very time consuming in terms of transactions going on in the county. And I would not encourage that kind of an arrangement. I would urge you to consider enforceability of whatever it is that you do. And a couple of examples. If a law is not easily enforced, then it's not going to work. One example is to look at our septic system regulations, which you folks have heard about in a different context. We have 8,000 people that are not in compliance, et cetera, et cetera. There are reasons for that, and the administrative burden for that is obviously more than our county machinery can deal with. Example 2 is a 5,000 gallon per day limitation. If you adopt something that's less than that, how are you going to enforce it? Virtually nobody has meters out there, so how do you enforce that? So don't create something that can't be enforced. And my last point is that I don't think we should depend on the legislature to bail us out with a fix here. We can't fall back on
30
ecology.
seconds, please.
We can't fall back on ecology with the Nooksack rule. It is not best available science now. It might have been the best we could do in 1985, but it's certainly not now. So that's a very shaky structure to build on and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, then Terry, then Arthur Preston.
Good evening, Amy Glasser, Bellingham, Washington. I've been reviewing the current proposal, and it appears that there's a desire to maybe allow the current in-stream flow rule to continue, which is confusing since it's clearly been ineffective in maintaining an adequate flow during the dry times of the year. I don't think we should be waiting for a legislative fix because the legislators just can't make more water happen. The Hearst ruling happened. We've got to deal with it. We have to figure out ways to make flows increase and deal with what we've got. So I think what we've got to start developing is mitigation plans and water banking programs with the guidance from the Department of Ecology. And although the exempt wells aren't our biggest factor like farms, I think when it comes to water consumption, we need to consider all water users when making this plan to comply with the Hearst decision. It seems prudent to begin with measuring what water is being used by whom and what amounts. I'm not sure if we know any of that information of how much farms are using, how much people are actually using, if they're hobby farms versus residential, but beginning to meter and measure seems to be a component to finding the solutions to how we're going to increase things. The problem is only going to get worse with global climate change, and we need to act now. Farms are obviously a much bigger concern, and it's frightening to actually say it out loud, but we've got to deal with that fact, and water use practices that are really causing the problem for senior rights water holders and others that rely on clean, ample water seems to be coming more from farms than residential use, in both this country as well as out of the country, so I know we've got a cross-country problem. We can work together to come up with solutions, but asking our state government to allow us to continue the practices that have resulted in the problem we're in now seems counterproductive and unhealthy. Thank you.
Terry, then Arthur, then Carol Reed.
This is a spur-of-the-moment decision to come here. I was at the planning meeting for the, for the Department of Ecology up in Ferndale today. Then I met with a bunch of friends at, I'm a city boy, but I met with a bunch of old boys at the American Legion this afternoon. And this basic thought is something I think you might consider with respect to this Hearst decision that you're inclined to make. That two basic questions: water gauges and water witches. Vice, in-stream flow and hydrologist. That's from my country boy history of Michigan. And along the same line, locals and lower taxes, vice bureaucracies, and needless debt, federal, state, and local. That's really what you're dealing with here. Spending lots of money, and a lot of detailed analysis that really doesn't and won't mean that much. Probably, at least from my experience. That's it. Thank you.
Arthur,
That was Terry.
Terry, could you come back and state your name for the record, please?
Terry Montagna means mountain in French. First doctor on Manhattan Island. French Huguenot. Johannes de la Montagne.
See? We won't forget that.
Arthur, then Carol, then Roger Almskar. And that's the end of the list, so if anyone else would like to speak, please get ready to come down.
Hi, my name's Arthur Preston. I'm a student at Western Washington University. Water is a very important issue to me, and I've been studying it very thoroughly the last few months. I know a lot of attention's been put forward as far as the wells and personal wells. And to be perfectly honest, I think personal wells are the least of our concerns as far as water resources. They encompass only a small fraction of what we consume. There are much more profound and pressing issues that we're facing as far as water resources. Specifically, lead contamination is a national crisis that needs to be much more time and resources need to be placed towards that. At Western Washington University, there are lead levels as high as 650 parts per billion, which is incredibly high. The 15 parts per billion is the EPA action level. And if that's an indication of any other buildings within this county, there's probably exposures of lead that no one is keeping track of because the EPA does not regulate large buildings as far as lead contamination goes. So I'm pressing that we put resources into testing, especially K through 12 schools for lead contamination. And I have other ideas as far as long-term infrastructure investment that can permanently fix these problems, such as innovative and novel approaches to corrosion control, like impressed current cathodic corrosion control, which would essentially be sending electricity through the pipes to prevent the lead from corroding into the people's water. Just to bring this home and why this is important, American Academy of Pediatrics recently put out a letter called "With No Amount of Lead Safe for Children." And just to quote, "Until recently, children were identified as having blood lead levels of concern if tests results showed a contamination of 10 or more micrograms per deciliter in blood. Evidence now indicates that the problem begins at levels less than half that amount, including lower IQ scores, academic performance, inattention, impulsivity, aggression, and hyperactivity." Does that sound something that a lot of kids are dealing with? And no one takes this seriously. The people in Flint are still suffering. No one talks about that. And I'm just here to make sure that you and the council keeps things in perspective as far as human health and the children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arthur, you might want to talk to John Walpers there and Mike Kim. They're from the health department.
Carol, then Roger.
Hi, my name is Carol Reed, and I just want to thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. And I'm just adding my story to the thousands of other stories that I'm sure you've heard about people that are caught in the middle of this. I'm currently a resident of Alaska, but I have deep roots here in Whatcom County. And when it came time to retire, I chose to come home. I bought 10 acres out on Carl Road in Nooksack in 2013. I had my well drilled in 2014. I planted an orchard. I had house plans made. I had a builder sought and picked out things. When you're my age, you're getting ready to retire, it's kind of scary. So I put it off a couple of years. This was my summer to come down and build. And I came down and found that I can't use my well. I know we're waiting for the legislature to do something, but there's a lot of us that are caught in the middle of this, and we don't have the time to wait for somebody else to do something. So I'm just here to ask you to please look out for people like me that have made plans, and now we're caught with a huge financial burden of having a piece of property that's worthless. So, thank you.
Could you leave your contact information?
Yes, I sure will.
Roger.
Good evening, council members. Roger Almsgar, president of the Whatcom chapter of Citizens Alliance for Property Rights, and I'll just use a few seconds to say, if we had a land use regulatory system in this country that was reasonable, clear, consistent among regulations such as wetlands and land use, and actually accomplished all 14 goals in the growth management law, there wouldn't be a need for a property rights organization. So this evening, we're talking about Hearst. As we've all learned, it's very complicated. There's legal issues, science issues, and economic issues, and civil liberties issues such as property rights. I've reviewed the materials, and I do support your resolution idea. I think the table on page 7 is, frankly, I'm disappointed in it that there's not more relief for people in there in Whatcom County that have suffered from this very arbitrary and political decision by our state Supreme Court. Some of the best legal minds in the state are saying it's a horrible decision that ignored law as much as it paid attention to it. I want to use my time this evening people are talking about mitigation. That's a good idea, but it's really hard to tell what people really mean by that. And I know one of the ideas is that there should be an expansion of the public water systems in rural areas, such as pipelines and right-of-ways. And that's going to be I don't know if people realize how expensive that would be. You're talking about multi-million-dollar projects. I'm working on a project right now where a contractor has estimated a cost, including engineering and design, of $200,000 to extend an 8-inch main from a local water association about 1,000 feet to serve 3 houses. $65,000 a house, roughly, to hook onto the system, plus about $10,000 a share to buy into the system. That's outrageous, and frankly, letting people use exempt wells is the most efficient way to provide water for rural residences. There are problems with fish, but we need better data on those, just as Mr. Satpal was saying, Mr. Sidhu. And so I don't think people realize how costly those systems are going to be. There's permitting issues too, wetlands, streams, etc. So I haven't heard anybody really talk about that. The water associations are happy to say, "Oh yeah, we'll provide water."
30 seconds,
but
please.
you've got to pay. And I'm working on another short plat where the applicants are paying $15,000 to hook onto a system for 3 new houses on 20 acres. They're getting access to a 2-inch water main in the county road. No fire flow. What are they getting for their $15,000, huh? I mean, please start thinking about those things. Thank you.
I have a question.
Roger?
Question.
Question for you.
You said you're okay with the resolution. Which resolution are you talking about? The one that we had before today, or
Mr.
the
Brenner,
one?
that's not part of this public hearing.
Well, the one in the packet.
He was talking about.
Yeah, it's not part of the hearing, I understand that. But I just wanted to say I think it's a good idea.
Okay, the one in the packet.
Please put some heat on those 40th district legislators. They're not doing anything. Thank you.
Come on down, Patrick. Okay. And anyone else that would like to speak, please come down and line up so we can know how many folks we have.
So why can't we ask a question like that?
Patrick Allison, 4825 Alderson Road, Birch Bay. I don't know how many years I've been talking to you about water. For a long time, I said water is a resource, it's not a weapon. But I was afraid people would pick it up and use it as a weapon. It's become a weapon. I told you one time, welcome to water wars. And no, it's not the person on 5-acre lots that I see as a problem. There is problems with putting people on 5-acre lots. The Wall Street Journal had an interesting article this morning called "The Smart City." It really dealt with communication you could go on with the city so you could get better service. I shot a quick email back to the author and say, when are you going to write an article about the smart rural area? Now, the water situation, that was a sarcastic remark, in case you're wondering. The water issue is fluid, and yes, it's a pun. You make the best choice. I think Amy is right. Make a decision. It's not perfect, but make an honest decision. And I think you guys and gals are very capable of doing that. Thanks.
Good evening, Natalie McClendon, rural Bellingham. I also bought a dream home a few years ago. It came with a well. Here's the well driller's report. It was filed on February 24th, 1971. And whatever you do, if as the resolution, I know that's not the hearing, and I do support the interim amendments that this hearing is actually about. But I wanted to address your first resolve in your resolution to allow counties to rely on state-adopted in-stream flow rules to determine legal water availability. So that refers to the Nooksack rule. The Nooksack rule, as I understand it, basically ignores rural exempt well withdrawals. I have a property right. It's called my water right to my property. And we may be concerned about some 100 or so people who have been caught in the middle of the process because of this ruling. But there are tens of thousands of people who already have rights to water through an exempt well in Whatcom County. And if you add to that the rest of the state, which this, if the legislature did something, adopted what you have here, it would apply statewide. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people whose existing water rights would be impaired because we continue to give people new water rights under exempt wells when we don't know if they even have legal access to water. That is to say, access to legal water. So I do believe in property rights, and I think that this comes down to our water law, some 100-year-old law that says first in time, first in right. And I dispute the contention that the Supreme Court made new law.
30 seconds,
They simply enforced law that says first in time, first in right. You can't give legal water rights to somebody unless you know the water is available, and that's what the Hearst decision is about. I do support the interim ordinance, and we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to us about the water issues?
My name is George Jones. I live on the Newville Road in Ferndale.
Get a little bit closer to the mic.
I live on the Newville Road in Ferndale, and below me is a big farm that goes clear to the river. I own 15 acres, but I have 2 parcels of property. The other property, according to the new law, says that I don't have a right to put a well on it, but I pay a high tax on my property. And I say, refund me my money. It's that simple. 'Cause see, I say, when we live on the property that was given to my wife through her family, and it was before Washington became a state and they owned a section of land, that the descendants should have the right to the water and not government take the water from the people, because that's the next war. Because if you don't have a well, where are you going to get your water? I have nothing else to say.
Anyone else like to speak to us? If there's anyone else, please come on down and line up.
I'm Charlie Storrs. I've been in the county since 1999, and I'd like to say a word in favor of science. I think dealing with this from a legal aspect is completely backwards. I think it's really important to see how much water we actually do need in order to keep the senior water rights alive, and I'm talking about salmon. If we wipe out the salmon, we're not going to be eating salmon ever again. That's losing 25% of your salmon every 50% of the year is just a ridiculous way to go. I don't think the wells are a major problem. I think agriculture is probably a much bigger problem. So I'm in favor of the interim ordinance while we try and sort this out. But let's stop trying to let the lawyers do it. Let's listen to some of the scientists. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no one else down in front, we will close the public hearing and turn it back to council. What's the wishes?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mrs. Brenner?
Now I can talk about it, right? I appreciate what people said, but, just because somebody's already got a well doesn't mean another well is going to impede or cause problems for the well that they have. And if it does, then the other person would have to stop drawing from the well. And we had that actually happen not far from where I live. Some people put in a new well, and it did affect somebody, and that person had to close it down and ended up digging 3 different wells before there was a well that didn't impede other wells. So it's real easy to say, well, I got mine, now the heck with everybody else. I've got mine, but I don't feel like the heck with everybody else. I feel like exempt wells are not any part of the problem, and it really does bother me. I do believe that the real reason this whole thing happened is to try to stop development, period. It's not about, causation of what's happening with exempt wells. The other thing was the gentleman who just talked about listen to science. I'm not a scientist, but there's a great book to read called King of Fish, and it's all about salmon. And I've done a whole lot of research on salmon, and the 2 major reasons why we have reductions in salmon are we've got other countries coming in to our allocated part of the ocean and taking fish where they shouldn't be taking it. That's one of them. And the other one is all the acidification coming from Asia on the prevailing winds and the prevailing currents that are hurting not only salmon but a lot of other water-related fish and animals. So it's very easy to say stop it because science says you should stop it. I don't think science says anything about permit exempt wells. And again, I'm going to say, because we've had people write to us saying, oh, well, even if it's just a few percentages, it's not even just a few percentages, it's less than 1%. And there's DOE data that shows that in Whatcom County, it's about 7.7%, so less than 1%. I can't speak for the other counties, and maybe this is appropriate for other counties, but this is not an issue in Whatcom County, and I'm not going to support extending the interim ordinance. I really do believe that we do have an obligation, at least for the people who already have wells in, who've already done some of the work. We've talked about this, and I mean, I know that the health department has a lot of sympathy for people who are in the process. I do know that. But it just seems like that's something that we should be taking care of right now while we work on solutions for the rest of it. And that's it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Mann?
So I'm going to vote against this again. But it's funny, I just want to comment on Ms. Brenner's comments because, Ms. Brenner, you make it sound like it's so obvious and based on common sense. And, none of this is ever really based on common sense, especially right now. And, we have so many lawyers and politicians involved. It's definitely not common sense. And it's not science anymore either. And I agree with you. The exempt wells are not the problem, but our problem is the Supreme Court. And no matter how much water exempt wells are using one way or the other, our problem is with the Supreme Court, and that's what this vote is about. So I I totally respect my council members up here who vote in favor of this ordinance because they're making that hard choice between, responding to the Supreme Court or not. And my reasons, my justification for voting against it is not based on issues of science or the water, but based on, I would like folks in Whatcom County, those individuals who are, as people have used the term, caught in the middle, let them make the decision if they want to go and start to build and take that risk, and then see if the state legislature does come through with a fix, or if the Growth Management Hearings Board after the fact wants to somehow set in motion circumstances that basically they have to stop building once they're halfway through construction. I think one of the reasons to vote for this is to prevent people from going too far down the road of building based on an improper water decision. I'd like to let the individual property owners make that decision. And as long as we put some kind of a disclaimer on the building permit or on their deed saying you're at risk of the Supreme Court taking away your well and stopping your building, I think that would have been the best way to go. So, but I understand why other folks have to vote in favor of this. It's not black and white.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
No,
Mr.
you're gonna
Brown?
get more discussion.
There's more.
Of course.
Come on, raise your hands, brother.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Brown?
I'll defer to my learned colleagues down here first.
Okay, I'll talk. One thing is clear that this has been caused by the decision by the Supreme Court. I just want to remind people, because I read and hear from people that somehow the council has caused it. Actually, the council was actually a party defending whatever we were doing in 2013, that we wanted to continue. Whatever resolution we are trying to pass to continue that was the condition. But there's so much misinformation out there. I just want people to be more responsible when they make these kind of claims that the county is happy to devalue people's properties. I don't know what the logic is. The second thing is we do talk about farm use of water. Somehow it is implied when we say, oh, agriculture is the problem. That's what we say, the word. Farms is the problem. I think it implies that somehow farmers are abusing the water or they are overwatering for the fun of it. You cannot really overwater your crop. You cannot overwater your cows because it doesn't sit well with the plants. So the flip side of that is that, are we ready to import our milk from China and our berries from Mexico? I mean, I think people are making claims that it seems like it's such a simple thing. Let's just go tell the farmers don't use water and suddenly everything will be solved. This is a complicated issue. I'm not saying that farmers cannot be more efficient or we cannot find better ways to do that. But just coming out and claiming and pointing a finger at something does not solve the problem. And same thing, we know that we pointed the finger at exempt wells and seeing the only problem. Now the second thing is that we have about 20,000 wells already in the county, and there may be another 10,000 over the next 20 years or whatever time is. Now, when we say that I have my own well, but I care about others, so one way of doing that is if people care about others, then we should look at that 5,000 gallon right. I know the people, when we say 0.7%, 0.1%, that is based on actual consumption of water. But the person who has the well, they have the right to draw 5,000 gallons. They may be drawing only 250 gallons, But are they willing to sit down across the table and compromise? Say, if we have 20,000 wells, and if they say, we will use no more than 1,000 or 500 gallons per day, we now automatically solve the problem for the next 10,000 wells. But the next person who wants a permit for an exempt well also wants 5,000 gallons rights to go with it. I mean, we cannot just create water. We have to sit across the table and compromise and put everything on the table. If we're not willing to do that and talk around the issue and keep pointing fingers at one, same thing about the salmon. We cannot, nobody actually wants that. We want berries or salmon or milk. They're not competing. We want it all. We want drinking water too. We want clean drinking water. So I think it's a bigger issue rather than keep pointing fingers. I know there are people who get really hurt on a personal level for their lots or for their development, but this is a bigger issue. Not just for 500 people who got caught in between. And if we do not think in those terms, we will never solve it. We will just kick the can down the road. That's what I meant, that the planning unit, RIA 1, all these things have been going on for the last 20 years. There have been plans written and 2-inch thick binders made, but nothing goes onto the ground. And that's where I think that as a community, we are not there to implement those things.
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I have tremendous sympathy for the people who are caught in the middle of this. My hope is that because this is a bipartisan political disaster at the state legislative level, my hope and my expectation is that there will be movement and progress made by the state legislature this session. I really find it difficult to imagine that the state legislature could take the political risk on either political party of going home without finding some reasonable accommodation for this. And I just, for those of you who haven't read, some of the proposals are a fee in lieu of mitigation payment option for permit wells in closed basins for affected applicants, which would allow permits to proceed while state and counties provide for the actual timely in-stream flow mitigation. The other one is to allow counties to condition permits with limiting the daily use below the 5,000 gallon per day limit, which is sort of an odd number considering that the average person needs about 50, 60 gallons a day for domestic use. And in BC, for example, the equivalent groundwater right for a domestic well is only 500 gallons a day. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to reduce that consumption level, but without impacting our citizens. And then for using unexercised municipal rights in the water districts that don't have the money to extend the service, but do have the water rights. And there are others, but I believe that there's a very good chance this is going to get resolved with the legislature. I think the right thing for us to do is to continue with this interim moratorium, to give the legislature a chance to tell us what they're willing to do to bring some sense to this and allow us all to proceed going forward.
Okay, any other? Mr. Donovan.
So this is another 6-month proposal. The last one, I wanted us to do less than 6 months to hopefully pressure some progress either on settlement talks or getting ourselves to deal with some of these issues like metering, mitigation, things we might have to will have to deal with, particularly if the legislature doesn't act, and the people that we keep talking about who are caught in the middle. So I'm really torn here. And I should back up, because I think the Supreme Court, I was not surprised by the decision. I think they actually were interpreting law as the law is currently written. We're going to ask the legislature to change that law, and I'm pretty lukewarm about that as well. Yes, and I agree. It's a small amount of water, 0.7%, whatever made the company's exempt wells. But under the existing law, if you don't have a right to that, you're stealing water. If I take one Pepsi from the AM/PM, we could say, well, that's only like 0.1% of crime in Whatcom County. But then we start blaming the farmers because they're taking a truckload of Pepsi without rights to it. And we're getting into these blaming fishermen, blaming the Supreme Court, and then kind of throwing this out to the legislature and hope something that happens. And I don't know how to, is maybe one way to make that happen. We don't ask for an extension for the compliance hearing. We start dealing with these things, and the risk of that is then, I guess we're worried that we will lose we'll be ruled non-compliant, we'll lose our control over this stuff. But if we keep, or we pass another 6-month moratorium. So as somebody who actually thinks the Supreme Court was right, I'm really not excited about another 6-month moratorium. That said, I think it is better, and I like to thank staff for that says from Whatcom County Council, that table, but you guys put that together for us to try to show this is better than what we had before. We are trying to work with people, but as we heard at our hearing on that this morning, that's opening up a whole other ball of wax. So I guess I could be convinced to support this again, but another 6 months, asking for, on top of that, asking for an extension from the hearings board, we're really kicking the can, is kind of putting it mildly, I think. We're ignoring a problem, we're blaming all these other things. I don't know, do we want to just take a risk and be ruled non-compliant? And it's a really lousy position for us to be in for a council. It's like, so approve something I don't like so we don't get shut down even more.
Mr. Brown?
First off, Mr. Donovan mentioned the work that the staff had done on behalf of the council. And if you look in page 104 of the council packet, it does give some guidance for those that we have been able to find a path forward within the limits of the Hearst ruling. So if you have a parcel and you're interested to see whether it's one of the ones that we've found a path forward, because there's been a considerable amount of work on behalf of the staff, I would recommend that you look at page 104. I don't want to create any false promises, but there'll be some people who feel that they can't qualify who do, and there'll be others, unfortunately, who feel they do qualify and they don't. With regard to the comment about kicking the can down the road, yeah, and dealing with the fundamental issue, I completely agree with Mr. Donovan on that. But the can that we don't want to kick down the road, I feel, is dealing with the underlying restrictions we have on water. It's often said that the county has an abundance of water, and that's true. We have too much water for half the year, and we have an abundance of water for about 10 months of the year, and then we run short. And it's like, at the end of the day, we can all individually last for about 3 minutes without air and about 3 days without water. A fish can probably last for about 3 or 5 minutes without water. At the end of the day, it's that we only have to be short of water for a very short period of time, and then our plant life, our animal life, our fish life all suffer dramatically. So I don't want to kick the can of dealing with the underlying water challenges down the road any more than we have to, but this is not a quick fix. And the legislature is hopefully going to make some headway in terms of mitigation, and hopefully we make some headway in terms of involving the Public Utilities District and the Lummi Nation and others to actually find ways of diverting some of the areas where we have surplus water, particularly at the mouth of the Nooksack, back up to areas where we can use it. But I think at the moment it would be the wrong thing to step away from this and not acknowledge that at the moment we have to comply with the Supreme Court ruling, but still keep working for an underlying solution to the water problem.
Ms. Brenner?
I just want to make a correction. Someone said that that what we're talking about with exempt well use being 0.7% is based on usage, not on what's allowed. And that is not correct, because the Department of Ecology didn't go around and knock on everybody's door and ask them how much they're using if they have an exempt well. They calculated it based on the allowance. not on what people are or are not using. And that's important, because that says it's 0.7% with the amount that is allowed presently. And so even though someone says, well, it's so much, it's very little, so.
Okay, any last words? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
No.
Paul Sadoo,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner.
No.
That passes 5-2 with Councilmember Brenner and Mann opposed. We'll now move into our open session. During the open session, audience members will have up to 3 minutes to address the council. As before in our public hearing, the staff will keep your time. You have 3 minutes. You'll get a warning at 30 seconds that you should wrap up, and then you'll, at the end of the 3 minutes, she will call time. So we just ask that you please speak directly into the microphones, and those who want to speak, please come forward now. We'll open the open session.
I think they're going the wrong way.
Max Perry, Whatcom County, and you wrestled with the Hearst decision. Well, we'll wrestle with a few more. I was here this morning, actually it was late morning, and the Sylvia Center for the Arts presented here at your behest, some of your behest. And they gave a great presentation. They're a live group and some things going on. I don't know what they're asking for. Few $100,000, maybe $1 million. I don't know how much of the tax money they want. But I just remind you that you have exempt wells and property taxes going to go down, as Mr. Rodenauer reminded us. You have Cherry Point, and what you're doing with that is definitely trending down. Petrogas is going to have a big decrease in their tax, and they'll probably get it. I don't know if you listened to the radio this morning, KGMI. Did you listen to the fire that you had in the jail, possible fire? That really sent a chill up my spine, but perhaps not yours. But this is, if you've been up there, it's rife for that kind of a problem. It was just a smoke, I guess, so there wasn't anything serious. But you're talking about kicking the can down the road. We've been wrestling with this jail. You've had an opportunity for a jail, had a ripe opportunity. If you'd have all got behind it at the time, it would have passed, I believe. But there was division among you then, and so we're kicking the can down the road some more. So I think we're just waiting. It's just a matter of time till a KGMI radio ad first thing in the morning will be not as frightful, just smoke, but it'll be something real. Thank you.
Max, just for a point of clarification, there was no ask at all from the group this morning. It was just information only.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Other people for open session?
Robin Dexter, 3726 Broad Street in Bellingham. I guess since you have the resolution regarding the legislature and the Hearst fix before you tonight, and there's going to be no hearing on it, I have a couple things I'd like to say about it. And I'd like to respond to some of the comments I've heard from the council, because you can talk about common sense and science all you want, but in the end, Washington water law and all water law west of the Mississippi is the most commonsensical thing there is. First in time, first in right has been the law of the land forever. And that's what we have. That's what our statutes are based upon. So as Peter Willing has pointed out, to ask the legislature what you're asking them is just sort of adding to this tar baby you're creating to trap yourself. None of those remedies are going to survive judicial scrutiny. Mitigation is already in big trouble in legal circles. And because of the best available science thing, you can instruct ecology to take over and use the Nooksack rule again, but the Nooksack rule itself is not in compliance with, it was adopted in '86, I believe, and it's not in compliance with the best available science, and it is not in compliance with other in-stream flow rules in other basins in the state. So you're inviting additional litigation, and you haven't even taken advantage of the possibilities you've had with regard to the legislation here. I know there's been a couple of settlement conferences. I think you have one more. And no one has even gone so far as to ask the prevailing litigants what they thought. I mean, it hasn't even been a question with the administration. So to extend your moratorium, which you've already done, in hopes you're going to get a fix from the legislature, I really don't think so. And if you do, it's an invitation to more litigation. With sympathy to the farmers, I will say that there are a million solutions that we've kicked around since 2005.
30 seconds, please.
We dropped the ball when we didn't continue to fund settlement talks and a process. And the reason was because there's a significant portion of the ag community that will not come to the table, and the rest of the ag community will not do it against their wishes. There is a huge reservoir of water to solve the problems in this county. And
Time.
it is the 30 to 50% of illegal use that goes on. So let's just get real. You're asking for a solution from the legislature to a problem with the GMA. And the GMA was a response of the legislature to local governments that said, hey, we want to plan on our own. There's a considerable irony there. So I suggest it's back to the table and create a way to measure water use, figure out what you have, and then we'll figure out a way to move it around. The ag community itself was
You need to wrap up, Robin.
Survive the suggested water banks, but you can't do water banks until you know how much water you have to move around. So please, I've been saying the same thing over and over to council for 15 years. It's your problem, you fix it.
Joy Gilfill in Whatcom County. This last week has been absolutely remarkable in the law and justice world. The Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force held multiple meetings this week. Vera Institute came to town and delivered an amazing presentation on the way that the law and justice system is being administered in Whatcom County. And I would recommend that any of you do take the time. It's probably some of the most valuable hours to listen to what Vera Institute reported, and on Saturday to listen to what the League of Women Voters brought to Whatcom County with the 4 testimonies from people who are administering therapeutic courts in Las Vegas, Nevada. The results that people are finding around the state, in Nevada, and other places around the nation in doing alternatives to building bigger jails is absolutely stunning and well worth the time for any of you to listen to it. So I think Whatcom County is doing amazing things. I think we can fix the jail. One of the things that came out of the report by the sheriff's deputy to the incarceration task force was that we have a lot of vacancy at the Division Street property while we're still really full downtown. I'm wanting to know why it is that we can't move more of the nonviolent offenders from downtown over to Division Street. That's a management issue. We may be able to make a lot of changes in the downtown facility, do the repairs, fix it up, be fiscally responsible, allow the county citizens to do the work that is necessary. They're doing amazing things. So I just propose that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak during the open session? Seeing no one, we will close the open session and turn it over to finance.
Mr. Chair, the Whatcom County Finance and Administrative Services Committee met today. We considered 3 items under the consent agenda. These all received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion from finance for our consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Next up is natural resources.
Mr. Chair, we had a resolution to approve the Birch Bay Community Park Master Plan. I believe it was a 3-0 vote. Do you want to do both of these? We have 2.
I'll do one at a time.
Yeah, that was recommended to the council unanimously by the committee.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Discussion? Mr. Mann.
I apologize, I missed this meeting, this portion of the meeting this morning. You know, I read their master plan, and I remember when we voted to purchase that land in Birch Bay, and one of the things that the community said as they were lobbying us aggressively to acquire this property was that if we just acquired the property, they would see to it to raise the money and take care of the development and operation and maintenance of the park. And I took them at their word on that, and I'm sure they meant it when they said it. And it's really struck me that in this master plan, 95 pages long, there were like 20 pages of footnotes on archaeological things, and no pages, no references, not even a sentence about sources of funding. And to me, that was contrary to the spirit of the initial decision, and I felt like compact that we made with that community. And I'm having a hard time voting to approve this. It looks like a great master plan. They did a lot of public outreach. That's all great, but where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? They completely ignored that fact.
Ms. Brenner.
I brought that up for you today, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but it hasn't all been determined yet, and those are still sources that they're looking at.
I brought this up with Mike privately as well. If they had said something in there about how the community was really rallying around and living up to its commitment and its pledge to raise the money or half the money or whatever, they didn't even reference it. And again, there are like 25 pages of archaeological footnotes and not even a sentence about where they're going to find the money. It's like, you know, this stuff is not free. The land certainly was not free. We put a lot of scarce public dollars towards that acquisition, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed, and it makes me not want to go further down this road. Otherwise, we're going to get in a situation where they say, oh, well, you voted to approve the plan. Now you got to pay for the plan. So if the plan doesn't mention where the community is planning to look for the money, then I don't want to approve the plan.
Other discussion? Mr. Sadoo.
I just wanted to know that, is there an urgency to approve this plan? Like, what is causing us that we have to approve it right now, or is it there's some deadline, or you are applying for any grants that it's important?
Mike McFarland, Whatcom County Parks. The funding to do the plan was in the budget. So we completed it as it was budgeted and put forth on there. So we essentially have a park plan. We know some things. There is a lot of archaeological information that needed to be done because decisions had to be made in terms of what we could and couldn't do on that particular site that would help inform the costs. of actual development on there, but we do not have funds to move forward with the development on it, and nor do we have a strategy where, we can say in 9 months we're going to be under construction. We did move it forward. We did inquire in terms of trying to getting some reimbursement on the acquisition costs. We were unsuccessful on that. And in springtime, we'll have another opportunity to apply for development funds through the state. That decision will rest with the county executive and the council if we're successful in going through that process, because we would have to come back. However, it'd only be a partial funding of what's out there. The Park and Rec District has set aside approximately $100,000 for capital improvements out there, which is a substantial amount for them, but in light of what it's going to cost to develop that site, it's a relatively small amount. And from there, we can certainly recommend sources, but those will all have to be brought forward through the budgetary process.
Ms. Brenner?
Why can't we just amend this a little bit and add, just add specific, text that says the county council is expecting fundraising and volunteering from the community, or something like that?
We can certainly do that, or we can come back later on with a funding strategy outlining potential sources and have it incorporated into the document. This is, the conceptual plan for the park with the public outreach. This is essentially what the public has asked for to see in their park or the Birch Bay community. The funding strategy sometimes are included in plans, sometimes they're not.
Well, the only reason I'm saying this is I appreciate what's been said about that, and I think that there's more willingness on the part of community members to support us putting that in there before we move ahead with too much more, rather than once, like he said, once we've got the funding for the thing, what's the incentive?
Sure.
Mr. Sadoo?
I would like to propose that let's take another 6 months and come back in the fall and have some conversations with the community, or develop some kind of funding plan, or more, come back to the council, and then we can revisit this.
Would you do that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I will do that.
Motion to table for 6 months?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table for 6 months.
But
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mann.
Are we really tabling? I mean, is that the correct terminology? I mean, I don't know, I'd have to ask the clerk. Usually when we table something, it kind of stays in our domain.
No,
You're talking about sending it back to somebody.
Tabling needs
Okay.
a time certain, and that,
Well, I'll leave it to the clerk to guide us on that one.
You should probably give a little bit more
hold in
instruction.
committee. Send it back to committee.
Or what exactly is it that you're looking for from the Parks Department?
I think,
I can say.
Mr. Sadoo?
But we are looking for, like Mr. Mann has said, that we would like to know more from the community and fundraising, or how they plan to see this come to fruition, and maybe add some kind of strategy to that before you bring it back.
Mike McFarland, if you look at the resolution, it gives us the ability of moving forward to look forward or look for those funding sources, of which the community is an important source. I think there's kind of a consensus on the plan in terms of major commitments. Sometimes you have to plan that everyone's in agreement with. The resolution kind of says, yes, we're in agreement, this is where we want to move forward. We don't have the funding, now we need to go out and look for those funds, whether those are state funds or community funds or donations or whatever. I don't think it commits us to anything. The plan itself, if you look at it, it's a relatively restrictive site in terms of trying to meet what we need to do. So we're not going to be able to come back and really change much in the plan. So really what it allows us to do is really go forward to the Birch Bay community and other sources to see what we can come up with on that.
Mr. Weimers.
Well, I'm just going to speak against holding this. I think it's a plan just for the development. They did a lot of outreach in Birch Bay and with other places to kind of develop the plan, so we have an idea. My concern is when I've seen plans like this get put on the shelf for some period of time, they can get stale, and next thing we know, we're spending more money to redo the plan again. I think it'd be better to ask the Parks Department to engage with us within a time certain to come up with a funding plan, because it's silent on the funding plan. So maybe within the next 6 months, come back to us to have the discussion with a funding plan that would include how do we leverage money out of the community instead of kind of putting the kibosh on the plan and I'd worry about it getting stale. So that would be my recommendation.
Mr. Brown?
I think perhaps we could achieve all things by maybe changing 3 words in the resolution. And that would be on the last line. This is on page 3. Currently reads, authorized to pursue funding and development to implement the plan which is attached here too. If we change the words and development to be to develop and, this would authorize the group to pursue funding to do the development and the implementation, the assumption being that they could do so after the funding has been identified.
I don't get what you
What page are you on?
I am on page 3.
Page 3.
And now therefore be it resolved.
Yeah, the last line of the now therefore be it resolved. So the words, if you change the words and development to read instead to develop and then reread the sentence.
Can you reread it? Because I don't get it.
Yeah.
So then it would read as, they'd be authorized to pursue funding to develop and implement the plan, which is attached here too.
To develop and implement the plan.
So in other words, we're authorizing them to pursue funding, and the development and the implementation occurs after the funding has been obtained.
Okay, so that's way a stretch for a friendly amendment to that motion. So we still have the motion to table this for 6 months, and it's been seconded.
I'm withdrawing my second.
Okay, the second is withdrawn. Does anyone else want to second the motion? Okay, so the motion is gone. And so, Mr. Brown,
I'm making a motion to amend the resolution as stated.
Okay.
Are you clear on what I've stated?
I am.
You say it again, please.
So replace the word, on the last line of that, now therefore be resolved, to replace the words and development to, so strike those words and insert instead to develop and.
To develop and implement,
And
okay.
So to read that they're authorized to pursue funding to develop and implement the plan which is attached here too.
Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it, but I want to talk to it.
Okay, it's been seconded. Ms. Brenner?
Yeah, I like it, but I also still would like some wording there that's specific. It's a resolution, no force of law, and so this is a good place to put something like that. Specifically including mechanisms developed by the community on how they will fundraise and help secure funding or something.
May I suggest we dispose with my motion first, and then if you want to make additional ones.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So Mr. Brown's motion has been seconded?
I withdraw what I just said.
Pardon me?
Withdraw what I just said till we vote on this.
Mr. Mann?
I'm ambivalent on that language change proposed by Mr. Brown, but I think we should be more direct about what we want, and I would suggest along those lines, we vote no on this or send it back to the community with some mechanism to do it, but say, it's a nice plan, but you forgot the funding part of the plan, and do it. Do the funding part of the plan. And as Mike said, sometimes that is a part of master planning, and let's just tell them we want to see that. We want to know what the funding means are, and really hope the community remembers their enthusiasm for this acquisition and their promises to raise the money, because that was really important to me when I voted for this. So I'd like to send it back to the community and say, have one more meeting or one more outreach where you specifically focus on funding, and tell them that the county council asked for that.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, if we're asking for that, it should be in this resolution. And I kind of agree with what Councilmember Weimer said. I'm a little concerned about shelving this so long that we end up having to redo the plan itself. I just would like to add a piece that, let's see.
But we're not gonna do that yet. We're gonna vote on this motion before.
Well, oh, that motion first, okay.
Mr. Brown?
To Mr. Mann's point, I had originally actually thought of just striking everything after the word funding as a proposal, because that's really the next step, is that they have to pursue the funding. The reason I didn't do that, and the reason I proposed the language that I did, is in response to Mr. Weimer's comment, that I agree, I don't want us to do all this work and then put it on the shelf so long that it has to be redone again, so that's why.
Can I just respond to that point?
Yes, Mr. Mann.
You know, I agree that happens. What I've also seen happen is something gets approved, it sits on the shelf for a little while, and then it assumes like sort of this like biblical status, like, oh, I don't remember how this important report came to be, but it clearly was written by very wise people, and we must obey it. And, you know, it's the same thing. So I've seen both outcomes. So I think I don't want it to sit around. I'd like to see this parks plan happen. I think it's really a good one, but I think give them 3 months, give them 6 months. I don't think that's too long, and I don't think it'll sit on the shelf and be obsolete. I think we'll have a funding plan and we can implement it then, hopefully.
Are you still happy with your motion?
Oh, yeah, I was just explaining it, I wasn't amending it.
Ms. Brenner?
So don't you think we ought to have a very specific sentence in there that we're expecting funding proposals from the community?
Well, I think that's another amendment.
Okay.
That's all, I'm just trying to do these in sequence so that
Okay, no, I'm not saying don't do this part.
Okay, any further discussion on Mr. Brown's first amendment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with Mr. Mann opposed. Ms. Brenner?
Let's see, and be it further resolved, the Whatcom County Council expects the community to bring forward funding options for this plan.
Second.
You guys have that? Okay. Do we have a second?
Ken second,
Second.
Councilmember Mann seconded.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Brown?
may I propose that it's rather than specs, looks to.
What?
The council
Looks to the community.
No, I liked it my way better. I like expects.
Okay. Any further discussion on Ms. Brenner's motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have one other item in natural resources.
Wait, hold on.
Oops,
Sorry, we have to dispose of the whole motion.
Now we
we
have
just
to,
did.
we have to vote on the
Oh.
amended resolution.
Right.
So any further discussion on that?
So
Mr.
I'm going to vote against it. Again, I think it sends a stronger message to them to get busy if we don't approve the plan, as opposed to just approving the plan with an expectation. I don't have high hopes for that outcome.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with Mr. Mann opposed. Now you can go.
Now I want to jump the gun. We had one other item, which we have a substitute version that should be floating around, a resolution requesting the state legislature to amend the Growth Management Act to clarify that counties can rely on Department of Ecology guidance for determining legal water availability, and we did substantial amendments to what had been in the packet, and that was recommended to the council for consideration.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Discussion, Ms. Brenner?
I liked it better the way it was to begin with, and I'm not gonna vote, I'm not gonna support, well, I don't wanna support this version.
Other discussion?
Do we have a motion? I didn't.
We
even-
do.
We do. Okay.
Motion to approve at this point.
Okay, so then
Okay, well, I'll make some amendments.
I have some amendments.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so just to refresh your memory, Linda Twitchell made 3 comments today at our hearing, or our committee meeting, and I agreed with all 3 of them. So just in order, and I'm working off the original one with red that Carl put
Oh.
together.
That's not the original.
Yeah, you're right, not the original, not the one that was in the packet, the one that was handed out, I guess, today. The first one, I move that we amend it back to the way it originally read in the first title block here. Replace the word "that," put the word "that" back in and get rid of the word "when" in the second line. Sorry. April 18th, 2017, the one that was handed out at committee today.
This is one we're
Yeah,
supposed
but-
to be working off of.
Oh,
isn't it?
man.
But you know what?
I didn't get that one.
This is just like it, only it's not red.
Well, I'm sure I did get it, but I don't know where it is.
You didn't get the memo?
Is it in? Okay.
The lines and numbers are the same.
Okay. Page 1 of the blue cover packet, line number 8, delete the word "when" and insert the word "that" in its place.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 5-2 with Mr. Donovan, and Mr. Weimer, you were opposed as well?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have 2 more. On page 2 of the blue one, line, let's see. Oh, it's not going to be in this version. Okay. So I want to reinstate, I'm just trying to find out where it would go. Okay. It would go on line 22. I would insert the words that were there originally, whereas residential water withdrawals from permit exempt wells represents a tiny fraction of total water consumption in Whatcom County, semicolon, and. That is my motion.
I'll second.
Which line are you on and which page are you?
It was from our,
It's on page 2. and it's
The
taken
line,
from the original.
line 33 in the previous version.
Exactly.
31 through 30.
It was voted to delete one of the whereases in
Yeah.
the original version, and I want to stick it back in.
Oh, okay.
And I can reread it again if you want to remember.
No, we know that.
Whereas residential water withdrawals from permit exempt wells represents a tiny fraction of total water consumption in Whatcom County and.
Okay, and you seconded it, Ms. Brenner?
I did one little grammatical thing, it should say represent instead of represents, because it's withdrawals, it's
You're right.
plural.
Okay.
When I was reading it, I knew something felt wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. All right.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, that was my idea to delete that because it seems like something we're kind of stirring a hornet's nest with in Olympia, and we had a very long, angry discussion about that very issue. And I'm not disputing the fact that it is a small amount of water, but that under given law, I'll get back to, you are illegal at 0.7 or 70% or whatever. But I'm not disputing the numbers, it's just that I don't think it advances the goal of trying to convince the legislature to do something.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I definitely think it does, and it's not 70%, it's 0.7 of 1%.
Okay, but
So-
I'm sorry, the flip side of this is, it's like, well, we heard some of this evening, then let's start blaming the farmers. And I think you're kind of going that route when you start saying, or in other hearings, we'll have people say, let's blame the cities, because the cities use more water, or the farms use more water, the farmers use more illegal water. The point is, it's illegal, whether it's a little bit or a lot, until we then ask them to make it not illegal. But
Mr. Sadoo?
I was going to say that putting it in, there's a more purpose of this creating a history for our own county and our own council, more than that how much impact it's going to make on the legislature. There are 39 counties. They're now sitting waiting for Whatcom County's resolution to really amend their law, whatever. Sorry. So I was going to say that I'd rather have it in there than not.
Ms. Brenner?
Yeah, I was the one, I won't argue like I did today about it, but I feel like what happened with this resolution is it actually went in a whole different direction, saying, oh, we're going to make people do this and this and this and this, and not even whether it's legally necessary or whatever. And to me, this at least says, it puts in perspective how much of an impact we're even talking about. And I think in fact, if you do this, I'm going to definitely support it.
Mr. Mann?
I appreciate Mr. Donovan's point. And I think what is also important is that this is a request to the state legislature. And I think we need to give them some criteria, some standing or some backbone so that they do it. And I think putting in here the fact that we are talking about one of the smallest, if not the smallest, user group of water will empower them to make that decision. We're just asking them to let us rely on the Department of Ecology guidance. We're not asking them to legalize theft. We're asking them to let us rely on Department of Ecology. And I think this whereas helps them put in perspective what we're talking about.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that amendment signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no,
Okay, that passes 5-1 with Mr. Sadoo out of the room and Mr. Donovan opposed.
Okay, and the last one I would like to talk about. Okay, so this would be on, this is the last whereas, page 4, line 26. We talked about the words through mitigation that were added. And again, I'm anxious and interested in having mitigation be a part of the conversation. But I'm not sure that adding through mitigation is really part of the intent of our request. Again, we want to rely on ecology's guidance, and we don't want to sort of rewrite that, and we're not just worried about mitigation. We want to restore certainty for property owners and remove the severe restrictions necessitated by the Hearst ruling. I mean, I really think that is what we're trying to do here. So my motion is to remove those words through mitigation on line 26, page 4.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove through mitigation on line 26 on page 4. Discussion. Mr. Weimer?
I'll speak against that motion. I think the mitigation is clearly hand in hand with asking to rely on ecology, because ecology's, in-stream flow rule has been found faulty in the county. We need to mitigate that. Any amount of water that's being removed that's illegal needs to be mitigated, and all we're doing then is kicking the can to lawsuits between farmers or private well owners if we don't come up with a solution that solves the problem, which is where mitigation comes in. If we just rely on the legislature to magically create more water, it doesn't change the priority dates of who's got senior rights. So at some point, if someone's impaired, they're just going to start suing each other. It may get the county off the hook, but it doesn't solve the ultimate problem, and mitigation is the way you solve the ultimate problem.
Ms. Brenner?
You're making an assumption that it's only through mitigation, which assumes that the water's not legal, and we don't know that. I support putting this in here. They can determine whether it's through mitigation or through other ways, or not necessary or necessary. I don't think it's up to us to say this is the way we want to do it.
Mr. Brown?
Throughout this whole process, I've been very driven by the science aspects of this, and also the need to be both fair and reasonable to those who have bought property with the expectation of being able to build a house on it. At the end of the day, we can either reduce demand, increase supply, or we can mitigate for our use, and so I would speak against the motion.
Mr. Sadoo?
I think another way to look at is that instead of mitigation, it could be compromise. It could be other ways. I mean, you can call that mitigation also. What I'm saying is why we want to restrict, and we should leave it out. Nobody's going to come and say, we're going to remove all the restrictions, period. Nothing's going to happen like that. It's going to happen with some kind of guidance, and I'd rather leave it more open and let them come up with that, and each county may be doing in a different way. So I'm okay to remove those two words.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Noes? That fails 3-4.
And did we have the full motion on the floor now? Oh, sorry, we did.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, I think we do have the full mitigation on the floor.
Well, it's on the
Maybe
floor,
under
but we
amendments.
still may have other amendments.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are
I'm
you-
gonna,
just one moment.
Oh.
Were you done?
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, yes.
I'm gonna try this another way. And remove, that restores certainty for property owners, and remove, if necessary through mitigation, the severe restrictions necessitated by the Hearst ruling. So if it's necessary, rather than just making an assumption that it is.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Any discussion on that?
No, I'm being nice. I want you to vote.
So that would be after the word "and," is that right?
Huh?
Where would you insert the words?
Remove through mitigation if necessary, the severe
That's
restriction.
not what you said.
Well, I mean,
said
remove
if
if necessary through mitigation. Either, I don't care if it's before or after.
Isn't it, and if necessary, remove through mitigation?
Okay, I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, that's the way I,
Yeah.
okay, discussion? Mr. Mann?
I just have an idea for you on this. Perhaps instead of trying to finesse this mitigation question in this whereas, what if we just put a period after property owners?
After what?
After property owners.
Yeah.
I think we all agree state legislative action is needed so that the county can adopt permanent
Oh.
water availability regulations that restore certainty for property owners. Period.
I remove
like that
my
even better.
motion and I second that.
You remove yours,
I withdraw my.
withdraw, and Mr.
Second
Mann, that
his.
will be your motion,
Okay.
and you have seconded. Discussion on that. Mr. Brown?
I was going to support Ms. Brenner's motion.
Okay, then never mind, I withdraw my
No,
second. I'll go back.
never mind. Okay, that ship sailed.
It didn't sail. You can't sail my ship. I can do it.
There's another motion on the floor.
I know that now, but I can come back to it. But I don't think we should, I like the period.
I like
Okay.
it too.
Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Good job.
See?
Yeah, that's what we should do more often. when
Okay,
in
now
doubt.
we were, if there's no further amendments, I don't see any hands.
Uh-oh, I
yes,
do.
yes, I do. Mr. Donovan?
So I'm still frustrated that we're,
Kicking the can.
no, it's not amendment. I'll shut up. No amendment.
No amendment?
No amendment.
Oh, quick, let's.
Okay, now we have the main motion for the resolution as amended, Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Brown?
I just want to point out for clarity, I don't believe this page is going with it, correct?
No,
No.
we removed,
No.
you guys removed it.
That's
Right,
not
so-
in this version.
Right, so for the benefit of the audience, I'm not quite sure why this was attached to this resolution. I think it was just misplaced, misallocated inside the packet. And the second thing is, I think we talked about, there was a discussion earlier this morning, and Mr. Weimer made a suggestion in response to the encyclopedic list of whereases, that we would do a cover page with this, that just.
Executive summary.
A summary about what we wanted.
Yeah.
I'm a bit worried about the legislature being asked to read 4 pages of whereases to get to the meat.
So what do we do?
And I think that makes sense, and I think the summary could be the be it resolved part,
Yeah.
because that's really the meat of this.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
As a cover letter.
Yeah, and
I'm
then
just trying to make sure it gets
and
read.
attach the other stuff behind it.
Yeah.
But,
Yes, Ms. Brenner?
but the be it resolved parts, the short is short.
No, I know, but I want to put it up front because it'll get read.
Oh, say be it resolved and then just list,
Well, just a cover letter saying we resolve, we request the following, here's the resolution supporting it.
okay. And we request the following, which is the be it resolved part?
Correct.
Fine.
Okay.
You're saying you don't think they read everything?
I think at the moment they are buried up to their eyeballs in paperwork, and it's just tough to get them to read stuff.
Mr. Donovan?
So we're open discussion now on this? Yeah, I'm not going to support it, but I want to say I really appreciate Councilmember Weimer's additions to this and edits to this. I think it's an improvement over what was in the packet by a long shot. But and I'm not strongly opposed to this, but I just want to make the statement that I would rather quit asking the legislature for a fix and put more emphasis on settlement talks here, or realizing some things that we're going to have to do regardless of whether the legislature fixes this or not. So, but I appreciate everybody's work on it. I think it's an improvement, but I'm not going to support it.
Ms. Brenner?
How about just give them one more chance and just do this, and then you don't have to ever do it again. It looks better if we all vote.
Well,
Just,
they're not going to get
this is easier than a whole bunch of this other stuff.
No, I know, and I don't want to do the easy stuff.
Well, I mean, we agree on, I didn't mean
Too much of that going on.
easier.
It's easy.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
To Mr. Donovan's point, I believe we should be continuing settlement discussions with the plaintiffs in this matter. The fundamental problem, though, is that the plaintiffs are a third party and they don't really have the authority to make any real changes to water law that would provide relief for the majority of people in the community. And while they may even have the best intention at helping us to achieve a workable solution, they simply don't have the authority to make the changes that the state legislature has the authority to do, and changes which we need in order to give people a path forward.
Quick response, I don't disagree. I think the legislature is going to do what the legislature is going to do regardless of whatever is in this resolution, and it makes it look like we're doing something. We've already sent a resolution to the legislature. Again, I appreciate the effort on it, but I think it's just symbolic politics, really.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I hope it's not, but I want to correct something that was said earlier, that we should have requested the litigants to, or, that we didn't do that. And the county did do that.
Yeah.
The county asked the litigants, to come up with some ideas. And my understanding is, I wasn't in the meeting, but my understanding was they didn't come up with anything. So it's not like the county didn't try.
Okay, are we ready for the vote? Looks like we are. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with Mr. Donovan opposed.
Good for you for sticking up for your whatever.
Okay. Back to finance.
Mr. Chair, after our last hiatus, the Finance Committee and Administrative Services, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee continued to meet, and we discussed several other items. The first being an ordinance amending the Ordinance 2014-073, establishment of the 2015 Courthouse Fire Alarm System and Juvenile Roof Improvement Fund, and a project-based budget for the Courthouse Fire Alarm System and Juvenile Roof Improvements to add additional expenditure authority and change the title of the fund to Courthouse Improvement Fund. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Any discussion? Mr. Mann?
I have a question, I assume for Tyler. I apologize, I didn't bring this up this morning. It snuck past me. I guess I'm just, do we need Mike to answer this question, or Tyler, do you feel like you're up to date on this package right here?
Let me know the question and I'll see if I can answer.
The question is, what's going on? The question is, what is going on? Like, why, the original expenditure was $260,000, now we're adding $811,000. And it's confusing though, because it's going into one project budget, and we're changing the name, but was this stuff we already had allocated and budgeted elsewhere, and we're just moving it to a new fund? Or is this, because it also says the higher cost than originally estimated, so I kind of have a nest of questions there for you to help me understand this.
So Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive, you missed a very good conversation this morning in regards to project-based budgets, the budgeting process, and how we're moving forward with some of these.
How did I miss that? I missed like 10 minutes of the.
That was the most important. I actually asked that exact question, and they gave great answers.
We can follow up on future applications, but the project-based budget that is being asked to be filled with money is consistent with the budget process that we went through in November for this project. The project-based budget fund had an existing amount, about $260,000, in which we hadn't accomplished last year. And so we're filling up that project-based budget fund with the money that council approved through the last budget process, so that then we can now go forward and do the contracting process to accomplish the overall scope of this project for courthouse interior work.
All right. The part that I've really understood there was that we've already, this is not, because it's confusing because it says adding expenditure authority, but what you're telling me is we already had allocated these funds, now we have to actually authorize you to spend them? Is that really the difference?
That's correct.
And that happens by putting it into this project-based budget? Okay.
Correct.
So that part I understand now. Thank you, I feel better. What about the fire alarm system that proved to be higher cost than originally estimated? Does that mean some of this was not originally allocated, or do we have savings elsewhere that we're making up for this and we're not actually increasing the amount we allocated?
That specific question I'd have to follow up with you. I don't believe there was additional budget request for this fund than what we talked about in the budget process last year. I think during that process, if you remember, we've been talking about replacing the fire system alarm for a couple of years.
Yeah, I totally support it, but I am tired of things coming in over budget, or especially in certain departments, so that concerns me.
Understood. The fire alarm system was a project that we wanted to accomplish last year. We weren't able to accomplish it because it was larger in cost than we anticipated. And so through the budget process, we came back to council and indicated what those costs were going to be. So I think that statement in this is leftover from the last project in which we've updated, and now we're asking to move forward with the amount that we talked about in the last budget process.
Okay, that actually rings a bell now that you mention it. I have to credit your memory. That is pretty dang impressive.
Took a while, but it's before 9.
That's impressive. Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, one other question then. And this one I don't expect you to know, but you might. The ADA lift. What are we paying for that? I don't see it in here, but it's kind of broken out separately, but then.
So the ADA lift is the lift that's there in the rotunda.
Right. I know what it is. I'm just interested in knowing what we're paying for it.
Next time I will make sure that we have an itemized list of cost per item, but I don't remember.
No problem. I'm still voting to approve this. Thank you for those explanations.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Brenner?
Also, because I asked those exact things, and I said it would be really nice for a while, for some time, for them to come forward and say, we're asking for less money instead of more.
Yeah. No,
But
I
you
was
know-
actually here for that conversation. I
Oh, you
was
were
here for that. I was.
Well, I want to say what the answer was. The answer was, that happens when
It
we don't
does.
even notice it, when they close out a fund, and we've got that money left over, which it's kind of so anticlimactic, we don't even really think about it, but it does it.
We should maybe do something a little more special to celebrate when we're under budget.
When we close out
So
a
we would
fund.
remember
Yeah,
it.
I like that.
Bring
Okay.
chocolate that day.
Any more discussion on the
Everybody will
ordinance? Okay, seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next item was an ordinance amending the 2017 Whatcom County budget, fourth request in the amount of $382,227. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion before us. It's 327, not 227, but
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
the amount was $382,327.
thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Number 5.
Mr. Chair, the next item was an ordinance amending Ordinance 2014-083, establishment of the Cedar Hills/Euclid Stormwater Improvements Fund and a project-based budget for the Cedar Hills/Euclid Stormwater Improvements for the fourth time to add $36,909 of expenditure authority for a total amended project budget in the amount of $1,792,495. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay. We have that motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next item was an ordinance amending Ordinance 2012-050, establishment of the Birch Bay Drive and Pedestrian Facility Project Fund and a project-based budget for the Birch Bay Drive and Pedestrian Facility for the third time to add $900,000 of expenditure authority for a total amended project budget in the amount of $3.6 million. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next item was a resolution setting a hearing to sell tax title property by public auction, request number TR 2017-02. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next item was a resolution setting a hearing to sell tax title property by public auction, request number TR 2017-03. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Mr. Chair, the next item was request confirmation of the county executive's redesignation of the Port of Bellingham as the county's ADO, Associate Development Organisation, to coordinate community and economic development services with the Washington State Department of Commerce. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Discussion? Mr. Sadoo?
The discussion I wanted to have, I really appreciate that Rob Fix, that executive director, came himself and explained that they are working on hiring a senior level person and a few other people. I just had an idea that what we should do, that we should put something in writing, because myself and Mr. Brown, we went to the ADI board meeting the other day and made a presentation, as well as we proposed that we should fund it more robustly, and we talked about that and we should fund it for long-term basis, 7 to 10 years, as I see that it's an important function or important item to spend money on economic development. Everything is kind of verbal right now, and I know that there is a deadline to approve ADO because of the state deadline time. I would like to see that there is some kind of understanding between the council and the proposed ADO, how we will accomplish this in next 6 months, 18 months, 2 years. There has to be some kind of a footprint pathway that we will achieve that. And we don't have anything like that. So I just want to put it on record that there were several things Mr. Brown has talked, and Mr. Fix has said that yes, they were willing to do that, but how do we document it? Thank you.
Ms. Brenner?
I would like to see that subject in finance at some future date.
Yep.
And we can
Mr.
go
Brown?
through all that then.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor of this request as well, and to leverage off what Mr. Sadhu said. I was also very encouraged by the approach and the presentation by Mr. Fix of the report, and to outline those for people. I think there's a general consensus that we could spend more of our economic development money at attracting higher wage jobs into the community. And I think the port is already getting ahead of the curve in terms of working to hire a person who's come out of the private sector, who's very focused on helping us determine what types of industries will offer the best prospects for higher wage employment in the community, and that the industries that fit the unique characteristics and the strengths of this community. I think the intent is to have that person on board, have them supported by a team that works on taking a proactive approach towards attracting those type of employers. And I think also working with the existing bodies like the TAG Group, the Sustainable Connections, the Chamber of Commerce, Whatcom Business Alliance, Whatcom Family Farmers, etc., people who have expertise in different sectors of the community that will match the opportunities that the community, I think, is well positioned to take advantage of. So I would ask that the council support this request.
Mr. Sadhu?
I just wanted to add one more thing, that I would like to make the presentation to the council, the same presentation we made to the EDI board in one of the future meetings, so that it gets in public record, and for the rest of the council members to also know what we are proposing and what a vision was presented to for the economic development. So would like to do that sometime in the future.
Ms. Brenner?
I'm not really comfortable doing it at a council meeting. I really think it should be done in committee. It's a public meeting in committee. The only difference is you're not on camera, but it's in committee. So I would rather do it there. There's a lot of this stuff that's even hard for me to grasp. And so I don't want stuff to go on in the council meeting when it really belongs to me, it's a committee thing. You can make your proposal and have it voted on.
Point of process, we are varying dramatically off of our motion.
I know, but I'm just saying, I don't want it.
I think we didn't get opportunity to do that, but I have one little answer to this is, actually, I want to be on the camera because the things have changed in the last few years, that we are not able to reach lesser and lesser people are coming to the committee meeting and council meetings.
We're really off topic.
Okay, sorry about that,
so
but that's the reason I want to do that, so that it's on the
decide.
video and people can watch at home.
I will commit to Ms. Brenner to think about that issue as a separate item. So.
Okay, yeah, you guys can talk about that
Okay.
offline. So we're back to the main motion. Is there any further
What was
discussion?
the main motion?
To confirm the executive's
To
request.
say yes to number 9.
Yes.
You already voted?
I voted, yes.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and Fire District Number 4 to reimburse the district for lost revenue resulting from the passage of the EMS levy. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, discussion? Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, just, hopefully, we had an explanation of that in the committee, that this is because the EMS levy passed, these districts had pre-existing levies that were somehow superseded, and we did get a couple of copies of a piece of paper to, it was about, across the 3 districts, $200,000 a year that is being replaced because of our levy trumping their levy, I guess.
Yes.
Can we use a different word?
Sorry.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and Fire District Number 11 to reimburse the district for lost revenue resulting from passage of the countywide EMS levy. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and Fire District Number 16 to reimburse the district for lost revenue resulting from the passage of the countywide EMS levy. This
Okay,
received unanimous approval, and I so move, even though you all tried to throw me off.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, there was nothing further from finance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. We have no committee assignment on an ordinance amending Whatcom County Code 20.92.645, time limits related to appeals to the county council. Do we have a motion?
I move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Just one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Has it been a problem? I like it, but has it even been a problem?
This is the one where we're allowing the council to do it on their own motion. Yes.
It has been a problem?
Yeah, and it just happened in the last case.
Okay.
And I don't think it's fair to dismiss the ones when another party moves to dismiss, but not dismiss the ones
No, I agree.
otherwise. Yeah.
I just hadn't heard of that.
Okay, seeing no further Mr. Brown?
Yeah, for the benefit of the audience, perhaps our legal counsel could just explain what the change is going to do.
She did.
Well, the current code provides that if an appellant, someone who appeals a case from the hearing examiner to the county council doesn't comply with all the time limitations in the ordinance, that another party can bring a motion to dismiss it, and the council shall dismiss it if that motion is brought. We discovered that sometimes there's not another party to bring that motion, and so this gives the council to impose the same sanction, basically, in the case where somebody doesn't comply with the time limitations and nobody brings a motion.
So is it says shall, so we have no choice, we have to dismiss
It already is shall. If somebody brings a motion, we allow people to request an extension of that time, but that extension has to be requested prior to the expiration of the time period.
Okay, so there's no erosion of people's rights?
No.
Okay, fine.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Moving on to council appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. We have one item, appointment to the Wildlife Advisory Committee. Applicant is Kanan Cowles. We have a motion to appoint.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The second one is appointment to the Noxious Weed Control Board, and the applicant is Patricia Lenson.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Introduction items. We have 3 items to introduce tonight. I would entertain a motion to introduce.
I'll move introduction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. We are at additional committee reports. I don't think we had anything else in natural resources. I don't think we had any other committees today, so, other than the committee of the whole, where we went over, about 1 billion items in the critical areas ordinance, and we were very successful. We had a good productive day, and thanks to Mr. Weimer's suggestion of bundling some things in, motions, and that, we really appreciate that.
And thanks to Barbara Brenner's amendments.
It's just getting there.
So we go on to, other items of business. Mr. Weimer.
I have one that I forgot in natural resources. I ran into John Hutchings, Public Works, and we were discussing at our last water resource meeting where we started talking about levels of service for water programs and potential funding sources, that we probably need to keep moving that discussion along. And he suggested that we try to hold another meeting on the same subject in the Natural Resources Committee on May 2nd. And I said I would ask if that's all right with the Natural Resources Committee, and I forgot this morning.
I think that would be excellent.
Yep. All right.
Okay, takes care of that little piece of business. Anything else? And anybody?
Nope.
Okay, how about council member updates?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I attended the League of Women Voters sponsored event at Whatcom Community College along with Mr. Sadhu, which they brought people from the criminal justice system in Las Vegas who've spent years using alternative sentencing techniques and other ideas to both reduce their recidivism rate and their incarceration rate, and it was very interesting. So.
I have nothing.
No.
Okay, seeing no other business before the council, we stand adjourned.